what are flexible services? So we use our demand and generation forecasts to identify times when demand is likely to exceed capacity. So when the requirement for electricity in a certain area is greater than the amount that we can provide, we procure flexible services, and that manages these constraints. So there are a lot of things that can cause constraints. So obviously in winter, when it's freezing cold, at the moment we've all got our heating on, big televised events. So the Queen's funeral this year would be a very good example of that, when we all had our TVs on watching that. So flexible services are a really good way to balance supply and demand and reduce the chance of constraints. So companies and individual customers who own assets in our region can provide flexible services such as generators, EV charge points, battery storage, and yeah, so that all of those providers will help the network to balance the supply and demand and ensure a safe and reliable supply of energy. And it's also a very good extra revenue stream for anyone who would like to earn some money, because we do pay for the flexible services. So what are the benefits? Well, there are a lot of benefits because it allows us to use the assets that we already have on the network rather than installing new ones, which will reduce our carbon impact. And by managing supply and demand on the network, we will also see a reduction in supply interruptions. It's less disruptive, so we won't have as many roadworks and digging up on the streets. Flexible services take a lot less time as well, so obviously reinforcing the network takes a lot longer and it costs a lot more money. So yeah, it's a lot less disruptive. It supports community energy groups and local businesses. And it also encourages the adoption of low carbon technologies such as wind and solar. And in turn, all of these benefits mean a reduction in bills for our customers because we are avoiding reinforcing the network. So who can provide flexible services? So flexible services are very location specific. So we procure flexible services in very specific areas in our region where we have identified that there could be constraints in the future. So any existing metered customers or anyone interested in building a new asset in those requirement zones can take part. And we do accept planned assets. So even if it hasn't been energized yet, you can still take part. Any customers that are able to flex or adjust how much electricity they consume or generate can take part. And our minimum requirement is 50 kilowatt of flexible capacity. So as long as you can provide that minimum, you can also take part. Also industrial and commercial assets and aggregated domestic and non-domestic can participate. So aggregators combine load from multiple customers to provide the flexible services. So yeah, even if you can't provide the minimum 50 kilowatt, you can still participate as part of an aggregated portfolio. So here are some examples of flexible services. There's demand generation and energy efficiency. So demand, we would ask that you reduce your demand by turning off or shifting intensive processes such as fridges, ovens, things like that, controlling heating systems like heat pumps and EV chargers. So generation, so we would ask you to turn your generation up at peak times. So renewable generators, batteries, standby generation, and yeah, renewable such as wind, solar, if you have battery storage as well, and the backup generation. We are the first DNO to offer energy efficiency as part of our tenders. So we do recognise that energy efficiency has huge benefits in long-term energy reductions. So if you can install things like LED lighting, solar panels and insulation, you can also take part with flexible services. So there is a link there as well. We have created some case studies, and all of these examples are explained in greater detail in our new case study. So it might explain it a little bit better if you're still unsure. So it will just help you to conceptualize how these different types of flexible services look like. And you can read about, like, there's a supermarket that provides the DNO with a secure service, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail with our products. So a secure product, and they reduce their energy consumption at peak times. There's an example of a farmer who provides a dynamic service by increasing their generation following a fault. And the last example demonstrates how there's a warehouse, and they would provide a sustained service by reducing their long-term energy demand. So I'll go through our products in a few minutes. But just a bit of an overview of what Electricity Northwest has achieved so far since 2018, when flexible services first came about. So since 2018, we've been tendering for various flexible services to help manage forecasted congestion on our network. We've carried out 11 tenders across 212 locations, and that's a total of 2,500 megawatts of requirements. And then currently, our autumn 2022 tender, I know autumn seems like a distant memory for all of us now, but our current requirements are our autumn 2022 tender, and this asks flexibility providers for a total of 1 gigawatt of capacity across 30 locations in the Northwest. And there is £10 million worth up for grabs for these services. And this tender is across, it's for the next 5 years. So it's from 2023 to 28. This is a bit of a breakdown of our autumn tender. So for our different regions in the Northwest, across Cumbria, Lancashire and Greater Manchester, you can see how many requirements and how much revenue is available in each of those regions. And all of these slides will be available after the webinar as well, if you'd like to have take another look. So on our website and also on PicloFlex, there are interactive flexibility maps available. On our website, our map shows our future requirements as well as our current requirements, and the icons represent each product type. So we have sustain, restore, dynamic and secure. So the grey icons are future and the navy icons are our current requirements. And if you click on an icon, this red box pops up and it will show you a breakdown of all of the technical requirements, the dates, times, revenue available. So that's really handy. It's just a quick snapshot and it's very user friendly. So that is available on our website on our current requirements page. And you can also see our requirements on PicloFlex, where we procure our flexible services. So as mentioned earlier, we have 4 different flexible services products. These are published within our invitation to tender on our website with each tender round. And for our current tender, we are procuring 3 different products. So secure, dynamic and restore. And the products basically mean the different types of responses that we require. So out of the 4 products, there's 2 pre-fold. So sustain and secure are our pre-fold products, and they are scheduled in advance. We also have dynamic and restore, and they're post-vote. So we would require these responses either during an unplanned event or following an unplanned event. And for secure and dynamic, we offer availability and utilization payments. And for sustain and restore, it is just utilization. And these yellow circles on top are the number of each response that we're looking for in our current autumn tender. So just to show you quickly our invitation to tender appendices and what you can find on our current requirements page on our website, because there is quite a lot of information and it can probably get a bit daunting when you first have a look, but there's a lot of really useful tools available. So it starts off with our invitation to tender terms and conditions. We have our standard flexibility agreement, which has been standardized across the industry and is used by all DNOs, and that is our latest version. We have our technical specification, which outlines the technical requirements that your asset will need in order to provide flexible services. And the site requirements is basically a table format of the maps that are available on our website. So it's a breakdown of each site requirement. So it will tell you like the times and days, what product and response is required and how much revenue is available. So that's a really easy way to kind of see all of our requirements. We also have our half-hourly requirements, and we have actually published this time for 5 years. So that will enable longer term contracts for flex providers. So we hope that helps. We have our postcode checker, which is a really quick and easy way for you to just pop your postcode in, and it will quickly tell you whether we're actually asking for flexible services in your area or not. And it will probably save you a lot of time in case you're wondering whether you can actually participate in the current tender round. And finally, we have our cost calculator, which is a new tool we developed this year, and that will help you in determining your bid price that you might offer in the bid round, so that you're not bidding too high and then it gets rejected. So you're able to see like whether it falls within our budget for that zone in our current tender. And there's just a link there as well to our current requirements page that has all of this information. So some timelines for you and just quick and easy steps to follow to take part in our tenders. So we're currently in our invitation to tender and pre-qualification window. So that opened on 31st of October this year, and it will remain open until the 27th of January. If you haven't completed your DPS registration, so dynamic purchasing system on Piclo, I would advise that you do that sooner rather than later, because that needs to be completed by the 20th of January. You can also sign up to the DPS up to 12 months before any of our tenders, and then it stays valid for 12 months. So you can definitely get started on that. And then the deadline for pre-qualifying is the end of January before bidding then opens. So there's just a couple of quick and easy steps there, like just a snapshot of our procurement process. So first off, you sign up to the DPS on Piclo, you upload your assets onto Piclo, and then you complete the pre-qualification questionnaire, which is a step that just requires the more technical information about your asset, just to make sure you can take part in the flexible services. And then you need to confirm your participation. So you can either confirm or withdraw from the competition again on Piclo. And then the final step is to submit a bid. So we'll just keep going. So I don't know how many of you are aware that a couple of months ago we did a consultation. We are always looking for ways to engage with our stakeholders and look for feedback. If there's, we're always interested to know whether there's ways we can improve our processes. This was part of our distribution flexibility procurement statement, which we published earlier this year. We committed to undertaking a consultation. So we are looking to remove barriers to participation and encourage growth in the UK flexibility market. And we're always just trying to make our processes as simple as possible, just to make it easier for flex providers to participate. And there is a link on that slide as well to our consultation if you're interested in reading the full document. So this is the feedback we received and a little bit of how we are going to take it forward. So the responses we received said that a combination of webinars and in-person events was preferred. So taking this on board, we have recently hosted 2 regional events for the first time across the Northwest in November in flexible service requirement zones. We really wanted to engage more on a local level with our stakeholders. And it was in a nice casual atmosphere. Stakeholders could just pop in whenever it suited them, or they could register to attend at a specific time. So we are looking to do more of those in the future, and it's just a great way to meet more stakeholders from across the Northwest. And following the success of our cross-industry event that we hosted with Piclo, UKPN and SPEN, that was in Manchester in June, we're going to look at possibly hosting more of these types of events, maybe somewhere in London to engage with our stakeholders in the South. So another feedback we received was more helpful tools and guidance information. So we're always looking for ways to provide more helpful information on our website and to our stakeholders, especially for anyone new to the market. You might notice that we're providing more like demo videos that actually demo how to use the different documents and tools that are featured on our website. We also have developed the case studies that I previously mentioned earlier, which are a really useful way to visualize how the process, how to actually provide flexible services to the network from start to finish. More feedback was streamlined procurement process. So most recently, we have been working with Piclo to integrate the pre-qualification questionnaire onto Piclo. Previously, it was on our website, so flex providers had to go a bit back and forth between Piclo and Electricity Northwest website. Now the whole procurement process is on Piclo, so it's a lot more straightforward, more streamlined, and we're hoping that it will really help flex providers and probably save a lot of time and effort as well. And Piclo are also available and on hand to assist with completing that questionnaire if you have any issues. And of course, you can always contact our team as well with any questions. So the last feedback we received was longer term flexibility contracts. So I mentioned previously that we have, for this tender round, published half-hourly forecasts of our requirements for the next 5 years. So we're hoping that that will give flex providers more confidence that we will be requiring those responses long-term, and that will also provide longer-term flexibility contracts. So moving on. So finally, we just have some useful flexibility links here if you'd like to get in touch with us. There's a link to the Piclo Flex platform, our data portal, which you heard all about earlier, and there's a link to it there. We also offer one-to-one discussions. So if you have any questions relating to flexible services, you can book in for a complimentary one-to-one discussion. And I know that the Connections team also offer those if you need to book in with a member of the Connections team. and you can register for updates. So if you're not already on our distribution list, that's a really handy way to stay up to date and be the first to find out about our latest flexibility requirements. And we also send our event invites and industry updates to those on the distribution list. And finally, we have a feedback form, and there's a link to it there. We're always keen to hear your thoughts. So if you have any feedback, please do get in touch. And that is all from me. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat.
Thank you, Kate. We do have a couple of questions that have been coming in as you've been going through the presentation. And I think Keith's had a look. So the first one was, how exactly would renewable generation be turned up on request?
So this would tend to be better suited for generators that have some form of embedded storage included. So that would tend to be better suited to things like biomass generators, where you stored the gas and then you release that into the turbine. Anything with a battery could release the energy that's been stored up from a renewable energy source, or some form of hydro system which has got stored energy because you dammed the water. So they tend to be the better solutions for turning up renewable generation, because I can see where your question is coming from, is that you can't exactly predict the wind or the sun, and you would tend not to kind of leave them turned down. But yeah, as I say, stored energy type devices.
Thank you. And then we have, as the flex requirements are highly localised, e.g. per substation, is this requirement of 50 kilowatts to participants per location or across the whole portfolio of assets across the Northwest?
That is per location, so that's per substation that we've put out on the request, that it's a minimum of 50 kilowatts per location.
Thank you. And what would you say are the advantages of participating in flexible services are, over and above providing services within the balancing mechanism?
So one of the advantages is that we do take a much lower level of portfolio. So obviously we're going right down to the 50 kilowatt territory, whereas the balancing mechanism does tend to be for the much bigger types of systems, the kind of 1 megawatt and above. The other thing is that it's you could stack your revenues between us and the balancing mechanism and other contracts from other requesters of services. So it's not just a kind of one or the other. You know, if you can stack the revenues between the two and make that work, sometimes you'll find that the kind of localized constraints occur at different times than the national types of constraints. And also it's a good way for local energy groups to get really involved in their local network. You know, it's a really nice one for a community energy group to actually be able to fix a problem with their local network, not necessarily just the national market.
Thank you. Now, I think you may have picked up Claire's question on the cost calculator. Did that answer your question, Claire, or is there anything more you'd like to know? I will jump on to the next question, but pop in the chat if there's anything more you'd like to ask. The next question is, regarding energy efficiency solutions, are they reimbursed differently than demand turned down, or are they simply an alternative route to providing the service?
They're an alternative route to providing the service, but you would imagine that they would be paid differently, because there is no real utilization factor on an energy efficiency scheme. So what we would expect from that is that your bid would be representative of that, and probably be predominantly availability only, but effectively all the funding would then be available to that, but assuming that you can prove that you did reduce the demand over the sustained period that the contract was in place for, but realistically for a kind of the enduring solution with energy efficiency.